Good afternoon and good morning in some places. Welcome to the February installment of our 30 Minutes with Linkspring series. I'm Mark Peacock, Chief Communications Officer and Vice President of Marketing here at Linkspring. Thank you for joining us today. Our subject matter today is all about Niagara 4 templates. Presenting today is Amanda Toomey. Amanda is a member of our training team. She will discuss creating Niagara 4 templates and provide us with an overview of creating templates within the Niagara 4 environment. Templating allows users to reuse pieces of logic in future projects without recreating links, the graphics, and/or the retagging of objects. Templated logic can dynamically reach out and find existing points in the station based on tag patterns to allow for rapid connections to external logic. Furthermore, templates can be set to prompt the user for default values and activation of extensions such as histories. As always, we'll be recording the webinar and we'll make this presentation available in a couple days thereafter. In keeping with our theme, 30 Minutes with Linkspring, we will do the presentation and take a few questions at the conclusion. If you have any, feel free and be sure to use the chat function. Now, I want to welcome Amanda.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. As Mark said, we will be discussing the templating wizard in Niagara 4. So what you're going to do is determine which component of your station that you want to template. You can template everything from an individual folder all the way up to the entire station itself. You can also template parts of your drivers. So if you have a BACnet or a Modbus or a LAN or something like that, you can template the entire network, or you can template the individual components of that. What you're going to do is find whatever it is that you're trying to template, and you'll right-click on it. On that right-click menu, there will be an option called Make Template. When you click that Make Template button, it's going to bring up the wizard. Depending on which version of Niagara 4 you're using, this wizard can have either 6 or 7 tabs on it. We're going to go through each of those tabs as this presentation goes along. So the first tab here is our template info tab. It's going to allow us, I think we have another slide. It's going to allow us to put in what we want is the name of our template, because you may have multiple templates. You'll probably want to give this a name that's really descriptive. You'll put in your vendor. That's usually going to be your company name. By default, it's Tridium because that's their company name. If you're running 4.0 to 4.2, you'll have a version number here. If you're running 4.3, you'll have the version number, and you'll also have a drop-down that says whether or not it is a final version. In order to change the number, you'll have to select that it's final, and then that lets you do your 1.0, your 1.1, 1.2, 2.0, whatever versioning system that you want to use for numbering these. The description is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be a really short sort of summary of what it is. Info gives you a much longer area to provide more detail. You can type anything you want into the description and info. These are string values. They're free form. You can include spaces, punctuation, all of that fun stuff. Icon, exactly what it sounds like. If you would like this to have a particular picture as the icon when you're in the templating sidebar, you can select one here. Notice next to my little eye there, it's going to tell me in red different things that it thinks I need to look at before I hit save on this. So I can make the template detect external links. I can make it look at inputs and outputs and that type of thing. We'll see those as we go through the rest of this slideshow. But this is really just giving you a chance to know, hey, we've automatically detected these. Make sure you look at them and see that we did it correctly. So your next tab is the component tab. This is going to give you a list that looks very much like your nav tree on the left side. It's going to have everything that was in your nav tree And you can actually add or take away different things from this area. So what this lets me do is if I have my folder that I'm templating, which I called template just to keep it obvious here, and I look at that schedule, I go, oh, I don't need that holiday schedule because that's one of my calendar schedules. All it is a list of dates. I know in future deployments, I'll have that in an external folder. It won't actually be here. So you can highlight that, you can right click, you can delete it. Let's say you decided, oh, I actually need an additional schedule or an additional point here. You can also use your regular palette sidebar and drag them over into this space in order to add additional things in here that you might want to add. Really open with what you can add here. So it's not only points and schedules and those big things, it's also any of your extensions that you would want to add. So if I want a history on that fan and it's not in my current station, I can go ahead and add one here. Everything you do in the in the component tab only affects your template. It does not affect the currently running station. That's true of all of our different tabs here. They only affect the template and future deployments. So you can change this as much as you want and nothing changes on your currently running station. Our next tab is going to be the configuration tab. What the configuration tab does is when you deploy your template, it will pop up a box that prompts you to set the values of various items within your template. So you'll notice I put a few of the most common ones here. Fallback values are a very common option. And in fact, where it says null over there, if I double click on that under the value, I can set what I want that default fallback value to be. So I can say, you know what, the default is going to be on. The default is going to be off. I left them as true, false, but if you've already got your facets set up, it will keep those facets through this process. So if you had occupied, unoccupied instead of true, false, it will bring those over. You'll notice I also have histories. So that second one there, that fan enabled, that's my history enabled. So if I have histories and I want to make sure that they get turned on as soon as I deploy this, I can put them here and it will prompt me to turn those on. It will also let me set the true value so it automatically turns them on as the default. Alarm, high limit, low limit, turning on alarms, you can do that, setting different alarm classes. You can do things like if you have a PID loop, you can set up what your different variable values are. Anything can sort of be put in here to prompt the user. The real goal with this configuration is to help whoever's deploying the template know the things that are commonly going to be changed. So if you're the sort of top level Niagara developer and you hand this to one of your junior people, they now know, oh yeah, don't forget your histories, don't forget your alarms, don't forget that PID loop. Here's the things they want me to double check and make sure I have set up correctly. Go ahead. Our next tab is our Relations tab. For most of the currently deployed versions of Niagara 4, this tab is really not ready for use. What this should do is if you have custom relationships set up within your station, say you've got it configured so your station knows this floor is associated with this building and this utility room is associated with this floor. The idea behind the Relations tab is it will grab those relations, or you could create new relations here. So you'll notice we have our Haystack age, UREF. We could create those here. Up through 4.2, it doesn't really work very smoothly. So this is something that I would say right now, go ahead and just plan on having to do these after you deploy the template. It is in the process of being worked on. We're hearing from Tridium that that's coming soon. But up through 4.2, it just really doesn't work particularly well. Our template IO, on the other hand, works very, very well. This is where it will keep those connections like Mark told you. Any external links, so links between items going outside of this folder, will automatically show up here. We can also create additional links by double-clicking on that left side under the add. What this does is it will go out and it uses your tagging scheme to find those external points. So you'll notice I have my fan there. And if I want to find whether it's occupied or I want to find a particular point that's going to control all of my fans in this area, down under the IO tags in the bottom right there, you'll have where it says value, and it calls these bind hints. If you double click under the value, you will type in what tag you want it to look for. So in this case, I'm looking for a haystack occupancy indicator tag. When I deploy this template, it's going to go out and it's going to find everything in my station that has that tag, and it will give me a list of them. And it will say, which of these do you want to connect to? If you have something that's an input, by default, it will allow you to connect to one item. That's because we have a default of one item, unless you've got the fan in turned on. If you have something that's an output, this is my schedule, and it's going to output to all of these other folders. It will also bring that in here. You'll add your tags of what that may be. So maybe my schedule is controlling fans. So I would put something like HS:fan to bring up a list of fans. Because it's an output, when I get that prompt, it's going to let me select multiple fans, that this can be the input for that fan or the output from this item to that fan. We'll see that in a little bit when we look at the deploy. Our final tab, if you're running anything from 4.0 to 4.2, is the graphics tab. This is going to grab all of the graphics files currently associated with your folder that you're templating. So in this case, I just created one generic graphic, but you'll notice where I have it circled there, that PX file. If you have a banner file, it'll bring over a copy of that. If you have multiple graphics, so maybe you have a graphic for the managers and a different graphic for your tech person and a different graphic for the lighting person, it will bring all of those over. So it makes sure that it brings with it a copy of the graphic. There's no more, if you remember from AX, we had to copy the graphic separately from Logic. That doesn't happen anymore. Templating brings all of it over. Just like we saw in the component and the configuration area, we can change what is on this graphic. So if you had something that was only necessary for the current station and you don't want it templated, highlight it, delete it. It goes off of here. We can adjust our properties from here. We can add additional graphic components from here. You're really going to put whatever you want that graphic templated with into this area. And you can click on that drop down by the PX file and do the same for every single graphic that it's bringing over. If you are running 4.3, you will have an additional tab at the end, and it's called Subtemplates. It's, again, one of those features. It's there. It's still being worked on. It's one of those things that as we move forward, it will become more and more powerful. The idea of Subtemplates is that you can deploy a template within a template. Not necessarily something you'll do on a day-to-day basis, but that is what that additional tab is if you're looking at a 4.3 interface. At this stage, what you're going to do is you're going to save it. You have two options. If you hit the Save button, it's going to save that template with whatever we named it back in that original template info tab. If you hit Save As, that's going to be where it brings up what you'll recognize as a standard save box, and it'll say, what do you want to call this? And you'll have that ability with that Save As button. That's really the difference between those. Once we've got it saved, there's a separate left-hand sidebar that is for templating. This is not a palette. It is an actual template sidebar, so you'll have to go up to the top and open that. You'll find your list of templates that you've created here. This is why having your different naming schemes is very important, so that you know, okay, this is the template that goes with this project versus this other project. Just like your custom palettes, these are saved with your Workbench file, so they are not site specific. They're not station specific. So you'll have the list of all of your templates that you can use regardless of the project. You'll drag that template up and drag it wherever it should go in the nav tree. So in this case, my template will get dropped under config because it was just a generic software points folder. If I was templating something like a BACnet or a Modbus, it would need to get dropped into my drivers folder because that's where they need to be. Otherwise, it gives you those parent errors. When you drop it in, it will ask you if you want to rename what it's called. So if you've given it this huge, 40-character name because you needed something really specific, now that you're putting it into your actual project, you can give it a very descriptive name for that project. So maybe you'll tell it what building it is, what floor it is, all of that type of thing. You'll be able to do that here. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Once we've got that started, you'll notice sort of in the background there, I have this please wait field. It has to process everything that was in that template. So it will take a few seconds to do that depending on how big of a folder that you've got. But then it will start popping up these boxes. So I told you with that template IO, it was going to find everything that had the tag that I put on there. So I just put in some sort of random things here. So I said my fan input, what is that going to be? Well, here's a list of everything that had the tags that I told it to look for. In this case, it's one of our random number generators because it's a demo station. That X there, if you only have one option, it's probably going to put the X for you. If you have several, you'll have to click which option that you want. But it will find everything that has that tag, give you the option. Again, if this is something that, in this case, I'm connecting to input 10, I get one choice. If it's something where I'm doing an output and I'm going from my out slot to other things, I'll have multiple choices. And in fact, it will give me the option to select what input I want those to go to. Then it will give you this list of configuration properties. This is what we did in the configuration tab. So you'll remember I said, okay, I want to know what's my fallback value. I want to know, is my history enabled? What is my high limit? What is my low limit on my alarms? Notice I can still change them here. Even though I set up those defaults within my template, if there's a reason I need them changed, say I want to enable my histories, I can do that from this screen. There's no point where they're locking you out of ever changing this. As you deploy, you can make changes. After you deploy, it's just a regular folder within your station, just like any other folder or network or whatever that we've worked with. They're completely changeable at that point. Your final screen that you'll see, it will tell you whether or not it was able to connect those input and outputs. If it can't find something, and the most common reason is because you didn't tell it what tags in the bind hint, it will show up in red. Second most common reason is because nothing currently in your station had that tag. So if I tag something, I tell it I want you to go out and find Boolean schedules, and I give it, even if I give it exactly the correct haystack tag pattern, if there are no schedules in my station, there's nothing for it to find. So it would show up in red on this list. Now, I told you you could go all the way from components all the way up to the station. The only difference there is you're going to right-click on the config container. That's where you click. And there's a Make Station Template option. Notice I don't have quite as many tabs up here. The tabs I have function exactly like the tabs we saw before. Components will let me add or remove things from this station template. Configuration will let me have it prompt me for certain things that I want to know as far as defaults and things like that. Graphics will bring over all of the graphics that exist within your station. The difference here is I don't drag and drop one station on top of another station. That doesn't make any sense. And as we all know, when you're on our Jenny boxes, you can't have more than one station. So what you'll do when you're ready to implement this is you'll actually go up to that new station, just as though you were creating a regular station, But at the bottom, where it says station template, and you've probably been using the default blank station that Tridium sends you, now you will have an option of one of your templated stations. One of the things I forgot to mention on here, and I don't really have a slide for it, if you notice the little medicine bottle under the template here, a question we get a lot in class, since we're getting up to the question part, is how do I make a read-only copy? Because I don't want people to go in and mess with this. If I'm going to hand it to my junior tech, I don't want them changing everything on the template itself. That little medicine bottle will let you actually create a module with these templates, which gives them a read-only version. You highlight the ones you want in the module, you hit the little medicine bottle, give it a name. Now you have a read-only version that you can share with other people. And it's good for a backup for yourself. So if you accidentally change the template, you can go, oh my gosh, what happened? How do you make them read-only or writable again? Just deploy the template, create a new template. That's how you'll get a writable. Now we're ready for questions.
Good. Well, thanks, Amanda. We've got a couple questions that have already come in, and we'll take a look at some others. One question is, what is the template config?
So the template config that you that you would see whenever you deploy this, and you'll also see it in that configuration tab, is basically Niagara's way of saying, here's how I deploy. So all of those boxes that popped up to prompt me for connecting links and for turning things on and off, that's what template config does, is it basically tells Niagara, here's the components and here's those bind hints and here's that type of thing.
Okay. Another question is, does the template store the new Niagara 4 system password?
Not entirely sure what you're referring to as a system password. If you're referring to the, sorry, my brain just went blank on what it's called, the passphrase? Okay, yes, I see that. Yes, the passphrase is not stored within the template itself. That is something that comes in as you've actually turned on a station within the application. So these templates, unless they've changed it recently, are really stored without that passphrase. Certainly the component ones are. As far as the templated stations, to my knowledge, it does not store the passphrase with those, but I've not personally double-checked to make sure that that's accurate.
Okay. Another question, are these or were these downloadable?
The templates are stored in your install directory. There's a folder called template. You can move them around the same as you would custom palettes and that type of thing. I would recommend generally, if you're going to move around a lot of them, you use that make module, that little medicine bottle. It saves it in a more compacted type of file system, so they copy and paste, they save a little faster. But yes, you can move them between different computers.
Okay. Can the template generation be automated?
To my knowledge, at this stage, that's not something that's available. To a certain extent, that's what that new tab I was talking about with the sub-template is trying to do. You create a couple of templates initially, and then you can reference those templates within other templates to sort of save you time. It's just not there yet. I'm not aware of Tridium trying to make this in terms of a fully automated, you just click a button and it does it for you. I'm not aware of anything like that in the works.
Interesting question. Are there any issues with using templates and the Cadero Haystack driver for connecting to external Haystack servers?
Oh, interesting question. I've not worked with that particular driver before. What I would guess based on the drivers that we've used is you would want to set up in that configuration area prompts that would ask you for any configuration detail. So if I bring over, for instance, a BACnet network that I've templated, I still have to go in and activate that network. I still have to turn it on. I have to make sure that the port is not, you know, conflicting with another port. All of that same type of thing that you would do just deploying it from scratch, you'll want to make sure that you have the configuration set up to prompt you on those. But that particular driver I haven't used, so I'd have to ask our tech guys for sure.
And then this is Mark. I will reach out to Larry Andrianius at Cadero and find that out, and we can post that somewhere. What's the difference between save and save as with respect to templating?
The save is really the quick version. It's kind of if you hit Control-S on your keyboard, it's going to assume that you already have the name and everything exactly where you want, that you're saving it in the location you want. Save as is where you're going to have a little more flexibility on things like naming and that type of thing.
Okay. In the real world applications, would it be best to template, say, a VAV controller or the point folder?
There's really two schools of thought on that. I've had people who prefer one, I've had people who prefer the other. I would say it really depends on how you personally tend to build your stations. If you're templating an entire network, for instance, you're really bringing everything that's in that network. So if you know that the way you typically do something is that you would create the VAV controller and then you prefer to add the number of point folders you need, if you're connecting to different items in different situations, maybe it works better for you to template just the point folder. Others prefer to say, okay, I'm going to take my BACnet network and I'm going to template the entire network, because then it brings over all that configuration that I've already done and I just have to turn it on. Those tend to be people who, every time they deploy BACnet, it looks exactly the same. It always has certain devices, it always has certain point folders, and they always look exactly the same. So it's really going to depend on your situation. And there really are people that prefer one way versus the other way.
Next question. Are templates able to be distributed?
You can copy them to a thumb drive, move them between different computers. As far as like putting them online, putting them on a server somewhere, you can send them that way. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to. They're not particularly large files, so they don't tend to take up a lot of space. Now, of course, if you're trying to send 500 of them, your email server will probably reject you if you try to email these.
Okay. All right, so we've got a couple more we're going to try to get to here. Is there any versioning control? What is a recommended or a good process for managing or manager multi-templates across many text computers? Very good question.
It is a good question, and we've actually discussed that in a lot of our classes. It's really going to depend on your shop, of course. What we tend to find is a lot of the time they'll have a manager or somebody who's sort of in charge of the group doing the deployment, and they will have sort of the master copy, and then you'll create those modules with the read-only, and that's what the people further down will do. And if something needs changed, it will sort of go back up the hierarchy. It'll be changed. That versioning that we saw in the very first slide, or I'm sorry, the very first tab, what you can do is sort of change that as you go through and you make changes. So once you've got your template already there in your template sidebar, you can double click on it and it will take you back to the editing area. So you don't have to right click, create it from scratch every time. You just double click on the template you already have, change the version number. You can change the name if you want to have version 2, or if you want to say, okay, this is for a different project. Then just save it again at the end. So you can sort of start with an existing template to make changes. As far as across multiple text computers, the most common thing that I would say I've heard is that they use the modules. And all of those modules come from either a server somewhere or a manager's storage area, either on their computer or on a network. And that's sort of how they do it.
Okay, we've got time for two more. The first of our last one is, will templates work with export tags and maintain tagging at the export destination?
Oh, good question. It does remember those export tags because those are coming over. Basically, anything that comes over as a slot in Niagara is going to be brought along with the template. So it will bring what is already on the points or the folders that you're templating. Now, in terms of will it automatically connect to the supervisor for you? Most likely not. That would be one of the things that you would still have to tell it, hey, here's the IP address of the supervisor, here's where it's connected. But you won't have to retag them. So it's, when it comes to things like export tags, it's saving you some time. It's not going to save you all of the time. You'll still have to make some of those connections.
Okay, and our final question, when you template a station, does it also include modules and jar files, or is it more for just config things?
It actually kind of depends on which version of Niagara you're running. But it typically will bring along with it the components it needs. So if you are using, for example, a custom graphics palette, and you use particular graphics out of that, what it will do is it will basically put those in its own little folder, and it will bring the pieces it needs, and that's how it will make sure that it still has those. If it's sort of a built-in module, it's going to still reference, most of the time it will still reference that built-in module. Now, again, that depends on which version of Infor that you're using. Some of them it brings over all of the pieces, even if it's a built-in module and they just live in this imported folder. Some of them it references to the existing module, and it'll prompt you if you don't have that module.
All right, well, Amanda, I'd like to thank you for a fantastic 30 minutes with LinkSpring today on Niagara 4 templates. If we didn't get to everyone's question and or you would like to see us cover a few subjects in the future, please email marketing@linkspring.com and stay tuned for our next session coming up in the near future. So on behalf of all of us at LinkSpring, we thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you and having you on board next time.